Welcome to English Language for SS1 at LightTech Academy. Today we study three important literary devices: irony, paradox, and allusion. What are literary devices? Literary devices are techniques or tools that writers use to create meaning, beauty, effect, and impact in their writing. They help writers express complex ideas, create emotions in the reader, and make their writing more vivid, interesting, and memorable. Understanding literary devices is essential for comprehension questions, identifying and explaining devices used in passages. Essays on literature, Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, Nigerian poetry. Your own essay writing using devices improves your expression mark in WAEC. Before we cover today's three devices, a quick recap of devices already covered in JSS. Simile, direct comparison using like or as, her voice was like the sound of Ocean River. Metaphor, direct comparison without like or as, Lagos is a beast that never sleeps. Personification, giving human qualities to non-human things, the harmattan whispered through the palm trees. Alliteration, repetition of initial consonant sounds, Peter Pepper picked a peck. Onomatopoeia, words that sound like what they describe, bang, hiss, buzz, click. Hyperbole, exaggeration for effect, I have told you a million times. Today's three devices. 1. Irony. Irony is a literary device where there is a contrast or discrepancy between what is said and what is meant, or what appears to be true and what is true, or what is expected and what actually happens. Three main types of irony. A. Verbal irony. The writer or speaker says one thing but means the opposite. This includes sarcasm, aggressive, often mocking verbal irony. Examples. A student fails an exam and the teacher says, "Excellent work. You've done wonderfully well." The teacher means the opposite. After Nigeria loses a football match, a supporter says, "Oh, the Super Eagles played brilliantly tonight." Sarcastic verbal irony. Chinua Achebe uses verbal irony in Things Fall Apart, describing colonial administrators who claim to bring civilization while destroying Igbo culture. In Nigerian daily life, someone causes a problem and another person says, "You done good oh." Nigerian pidgin verbal irony. B. Situational irony. What happens is the opposite of what was expected. Examples. A traffic warden is killed by a car while directing traffic. Nigeria, with the largest petroleum reserves in Africa, suffers severe petrol scarcity, a situation that has affected Nigerian life for decades, the irony of an oil-rich nation with no fuel. A hospital for the sick has no medicine. The fire station burns down. A police officer is robbed. C. Dramatic irony. The audience or reader knows something that a character in the story does not know. This creates suspense, tension, or tragedy. Examples. In Things Fall Apart, the reader understands the colonial threat long before Okonkwo does, creating dramatic irony and tragic sympathy. In Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare, the audience knows Juliet is only sleeping, but Romeo thinks she is dead, he kills himself. Dramatic irony creates the tragedy. In Nigerian soap operas and Nollywood films, the audience often knows a character is being deceived by a villain before the character realizes. This is dramatic irony. Cosmic irony, or a fourth type, less commonly tested at SS1 but worth knowing. Fate or destiny acts in a way that is cruel, unfair, or absurd, as if the universe itself is mocking human efforts. Example. A farmer works hard all year, the harvest is destroyed by locusts the night before collection. How to identify irony in WAEC comprehension. Look for praise that seems exaggerated or out of place, verbal irony and events that are the opposite of what logic would suggest, situational irony, the character acting on wrong information while the reader knows better, but dramatic irony. Common WAEC question. Identify the type of irony in lines X, Y and explain its effect. 2. Paradox. A paradox is a statement that seems self-contradictory or absurd on the surface, but when examined more carefully, reveals a deep truth. Key phrase: seems contradictory but is actually true. A paradox is not simply a contradiction is just logically impossible. A paradox has underlying truth. Famous paradoxes. Less is more. Apparently contradictory, less of something equals more. But true, sometimes simplicity is more effective/beautiful than excess. I must be cruel to be kind. Shakespeare, Hamlet, being harsh/strict can ultimately be an act of kindness, e.g., a strict but caring Nigerian teacher. The more you learn, the less you know. The more knowledge you gain, the more you realize how much you do not know. True of wisdom. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. George Orwell, 1984. These are deliberately absurd paradoxes used for political satire. Standing still is moving forward. Sometimes waiting and reflecting is a form of progress. Nigerian/African examples of paradoxical ideas. Nigeria is one of the richest countries in Africa, yet one of the poorest in terms of human development. Paradox of the oil-rich poor nation, resource curse. Wole Soyinka, Nobel laureate 1986, the man who dies for what he believes lives forever. Paradox, death equals eternal life in memory and legacy. Chinua Achebe, when old age speaks to youth, it speaks of wisdom. When youth speaks to old age, it speaks of tomorrow. Paradox of the generation gap. Distinguishing paradox from irony. Irony equals contrast between what is said/appears and what is meant/is true. Paradox equals statement that seems self-contradictory but reveals truth. Oxymoron, a related device, a compressed paradox, two contradictory words placed together: bittersweet, living death, deafening silence, cruel kindness, wise fool, sweet sorrow. Nigerian oxymorons in common use. Civil War, it was not civil, the Nigerian Civil War 1967–1970. Organized chaos, describing Lagos traffic. Sweet pain, Yoruba concept of a bittersweet emotional experience. 3. Allusion. An allusion is an indirect reference to a well-known person, place, event, idea, literary work, or cultural/historical item without directly naming or explaining it. The writer assumes the reader will recognize the reference. Key phrase, indirect reference, expecting the reader to understand. Why writers use allusion? To add depth of meaning without lengthy explanation. To connect a current text to a larger cultural or historical context. To create emotion by invoking a powerful shared memory or reference. To make the writing more sophisticated. Types of allusions. A. Biblical allusions, references to the Bible, common in Nigerian writing. Nigeria is highly religious. He was a good Samaritan. Luke 10 verses 25–37, someone who helps a stranger unexpectedly. Nigerian government sometimes called a good Samaritan, sarcastically when it provides rare public service. It was a Judas kiss. An act of betrayal. Judas Iscariot's kiss that identified Jesus to those who arrested him, used in Nigerian politics to describe political betrayal. She carried her cross patiently, bearing great suffering with dignity. He is a Pharisee. A hypocrite who follows rules outwardly but not in spirit, used of some Nigerian politicians who profess religion but act corruptly. B. Historical allusions. She was Nigeria's Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years but emerged forgiven. Allusion to Nelson Mandela's imprisonment on Robben Island, South Africa, implies heroic resilience. The scandal was Nigeria's Watergate. Allusion to the 1972 Nixon/Watergate political scandal in the USA implies a political cover-up. He was the Abiola of his generation. Reference to MKO Abiola, winner of Nigeria's 1993 presidential election, annulled by military, implies a democratic leader denied justice. C. Literary allusions. His life story echoes Okonkwo's tragedy. Allusion to the protagonist of Chinua Achebe's things fall apart, implies a proud, strong man destroyed by the clash of tradition and change. He was a Shakespearean tragic hero, great but fatally flawed. Allusion to Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, implies a powerful man undone by one weakness. D. Cultural/mythological allusions. Like Sango calling down lightning on the corrupt. Allusion to Sango, the Yoruba deity of thunder and lightning, often invoked in Yoruba poetry and spoken word. He was as stubborn as an Abuja bureaucrat trying to collect his organ from his shrine. Cultural allusion combining Nigerian administrative context with Yoruba tradition. It was our own Gadam's moment. Allusion to the great ancient trans-Saharan trade city implies a moment of great cultural/commercial meeting. WAEC exam tips. 1. For irony, identify the type, verbal/situational/dramatic, and explain the contrast between appearance/reality or expectation/outcome. 2. For paradox, explain why the statement seems contradictory and what deeper truth it reveals. 3. For allusion, name what is being alluded to and explain what it adds to the text meaning. 4. Common WAEC comprehension question: what literary device is used in the phrase? Explain its effect on the reader. 5. Common WAEC question: what is the effect of the use of irony in the extract? 6. Know the difference. Irony is not equal to paradox, is not equal to oxymoron, they are related but distinct. WAEC may ask you to distinguish. 7. Nigerian literary allusions frequently appear in WAEC passages. No Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, J.P. Clark, Ola Rotemai, Niyi Osonder as key Nigerian literary figures whose works may be referenced. Summary. Irony. Contrast between what is said/appears and what is meant/true. 3 types: verbal, saying opposite; situational, opposite of what's expected; dramatic, reader knows more than character. Paradox, statement that seems self-contradictory but reveals deep truth. Related, oxymoron, two contradictory words together, bittersweet, deafening silence. Allusion, indirect reference to a well-known person/event/text, expecting the reader to recognize it. Types: biblical, historical, literary, cultural/mythological. Nigerian examples: irony of Ulrich Ponation, paradox less is more, biblical allusions, Good Samaritan, Judas, literary allusions, Achebe's Okonkwo, Soyinka. Powered by Lightech Academy academy.lightech.com.ng NECO-approved SS1 English Language.